Can you believe it? It is June already. So here are a bunch of crops to prioritize sowing in June for self-sufficiency. So for me, one of the staples to start off in June, if you haven't done it yet in May, is your winter squash. I've got two varieties here, jumbo pink banana and blue banana. And both of these don't taste like banana, they just look a little bit like a banana. And they store really, really well until June the following year. So if you store them in the right location, you can be enjoying squash even throughout the hunger gap the following year. So I've got this open space behind me. I'm putting in a bunch of perennials over in that side, but along here I'm going to be planting some winter squash, and this is going to be kind of my nice squash border. So next up is the climbing beans. I've got two different examples here. I've got runner beans and Greek gigantes that I've interspersed. Now, I'll give you an example of a really good way of succession planting climbing beans if you feel you don't have enough space in your garden. I'll share what we did here last year. But the thing about runner beans and climbing beans, and it also includes French climbing beans, they're so fast at growing, and there are many options out there where you can just dry them and then you can use them throughout winter. But in terms of just having some nice vertical support, adding interest, for runner beans, you can also eat the red flowers. And yeah, it's just a really nice thing to have growing in your garden. So last year here in the Self-Sufficiency garden, which by the way, thank you to everyone in North America who've now got a copy of the book and for your support. But this is exactly where I grew garlic last year. Growing garlic again, it's looking really nice and healthy. And then after this garlic was harvested, I then put in a trellis and grew climbing beans and had a fantastic crop of climbing beans. Obviously in a small space, one of the ways to maximize how to grow stuff is making use of the vertical. So this is a climbing French bean called Abundance, and it is certainly living up to its name. In here, I had the garlic growing. I then pulled it out and now enjoying these beans and adding a nice little bit of structure and visual interest within the garden. So if you have garlic growing, when you harvest it, that's where you can plant your climbing beans. So the next thing to sow is one of my favourites. I maybe don't speak enough about it. I've got some growing here. Here is an example. Carrots. So I'm now harvesting carrots from the hotbed. So I've got my nice early crop. I have started my kind of intermediate carrots, which I can see they're just poking through. But June is a great opportunity to just batch sow a bunch of carrots. If you've got a couple of little spaces, wherever you can just fit a row of carrots, because you want to direct sow them, you don't want to start them off in modules, but just make sure you get some carrots in. You can look at resistant varieties that are resistant to carrot root fly, or if you have taller raised beds like the one in front of me, or the longer, taller Vigo garden raised bed, because it's above 2 foot or 60 centimeters in height, it is protected from carrot root flies, and so I can basically grow whatever variety of carrot I want to grow. Next up is one of the brassica staples, and that is your winter cabbages. So in front of me here, these are spring cabbages, and I'm harvesting the outer leaves. In fact, I had a couple for dinner last night, and then I'm letting the centers to form a head, which in around 2 to 3 weeks I will be harvesting and just treat it like a normal cabbage. But starting off your winter cabbage in June, one of the things you can do is start them off in kind of like smaller modules and then into 1 litre pots, and then you can grow them on so they're nice and developed. So as and when gaps appear later on in summer, you can then stick in a cabbage like a Savoy cabbage or something to enjoy over winter. And there's something so nice about heading up in winter to pick a really nice bit of cabbage. Sticking with the brassica theme, I'm also going to put in kale as a great crop to start off in June. Unlike some of the other brassica crops like your purple sprouting broccoli and your Brussels sprouts, there is less time pressure for starting off kale. Kale, it's super hardy, and kale, you've obviously got all of the leaves that you can enjoy. You can treat it like a salad crop with baby kale. You've got the big leaves that you can enjoy over winter, either outside or under cover. But then during the hungry gap, at the start of the hungry gap, you then get all of the lovely kale flower stems that you can enjoy eating, and then you can let it flower, and the bumblebees absolutely love the flowers. It's really important early forage for them at the start of the season. So last month I recommended sowing basil, and if you haven't done it, I would still definitely recommend it in June. It's a great month for sowing basil. But sticking with the herb theme, the next thing I would prioritize is coriander or cilantro, and I've got a bunch of coriander growing here. The main thing that I want from this coriander is the green coriander seeds, which are just fantastic. But of course, I can enjoy all of the leaves. Now, if you are one of the people that don't like coriander, I'm growing a really nice coriander alternative, which I'll share in a bit. But coriander is great, very simple to grow. You can grow a variety called confetti coriander, which just looks very similar to dill. And I've got dill growing here, and that's also doing amazingly. And the other thing, just because I'm here and I've got lots of salads, doing just anything that is a salad leaf, be it pak choi, mustard, lettuce, spinach, and little radishes. This was a radish seed that obviously went a bit rogue, but just plant up your salads, especially towards the end of June. Once, oh, it's kind of terrifying, but once the days start to get shorter again, that's a really good time to start sowing more of your oriental green salads. So yeah, just sow wherever you can. So here, this looks a little bit like a marigold, but this is a beautiful herb called Wacatai black mint, or Peruvian black mint, and it can be used anywhere where you'd use coriander in cooking. And it is small now, but it grows quickly, and it gets to around 5 feet, so 1.5 meters tall at least, with really nice flowers. But it is very abundant. It grows nice and tall, so rather than some plants which need a lot of space, you can just stick this between a couple of other plants, and it's going to grow up and provide you with loads of really nice leaves, which, if you can get your seeds, I got them from real seeds, just try growing Wacatai black mint. It is such a joy. And of course, you know I'm going to say it, but it has to be potatoes. And these are first earlies, which June is actually a really good time to sow first earlies. I started to have a little investigate, and I can see these little potatoes, these little spuds starting to appear. Now, right in front of me here, these are a bunch of onions. And one of the lovely things about onions, and this is just a little aside because it's not the time to sow onions, although you can with spring onions, but what I would say is you don't need to bother sowing spring onions if you're growing onions, because these onion tops work really well as a spring onion. And when you cook some new potatoes and you chop up some fresh onion tops over the top and a bit of butter, it is an absolute delight. Even though this is by no means a comprehensive list of all of the different crops that you can sow in June, these are the crops that I prioritise in terms of trying to feature and to get year-round self-sufficiency. If you want to find out more about this space, this half-size allotment space, then watch this video here, because last year we grew enough food here for 4 people to get 5 portions of veg every single day of the year.